Hi, welcome y'all to the Political Science Student Association. This week's topic is actually political violence. I think it's a pretty pertinent topic for currently with everything that's happened here in our country and in other countries at the moment. So whenever you guys are ready, you can jump on in and start talking and discussing. And also, I wanted to mention we have some upcoming events fairly soon. On the 22nd, we're having Professor Miner come talk about foreign policies. And then during the last week of October, we'll get you more information on that. I believe it'll be that Tuesday before Halloween. We're going to be having a Halloween party. And it's just going to be chill and stuff, like just a place for everybody to come together. And there'll be food, so please come.
All right, for those of you who might be newcomers, I will be passing around an attendance sheet, even if you're not here for this or if you didn't know this was going to happen. If you sign this attendance sheet, it will verify your attendance, and there's a spot. Excuse me, there's a spot for a faculty name next to your name, and if you put a faculty name down, I will contact that faculty member and let them know you attended. Can't guarantee they'll do anything about it, but hopefully you can bug them for extra credit, and I will verify, assuming I can figure out what faculty member it is, but I will contact them. Okay, so there seems to be a lot of this going on now. Political violence. Let me just start. One disturbing thing that I saw recently is that more and more Americans apparently feel that sometimes political violence is necessary. And that's on both sides of the aisle. What do you all think about that? Is it ever necessary? Are we at that point yet? Can we do anything about it? There's a whole bunch of questions to start you off. Yeah.
Not to be like a total doomer. I mean, I'm not personally like, oh, we should like have political violence, but it is important to kind of acknowledge that it has always been here in our country. I mean, we're a country founded on a revolution, a violent revolution. We've had a civil war, not to mention all the different domestic terrorist attacks we've had within the past century. It's something that's kind of like defined us as a nation, is violence. I mean, gun ownership is the highest in the world, I think, except for maybe Switzerland. It's weirdly almost inevitable. Not necessarily that it's the right thing, but it is something that we have to kind of come to terms with as Americans, as it is something that's foundational in our principles, is messed up as it is.
Do the rest of you agree with that? So we're done? No? What else?
I can go. I think there's been a development of people who feel like the institutions don't work for them over the years, and that goes into why there's been the development of people feeling that there is a necessity for political violence, because they don't feel like our institutions are helping them or in any way.
Okay, I'm not the expert on this. Some of you may have taken courses in it, but usually it's based on, let's say, hopelessness. The idea that there's nothing left. Is there more of that now than there has been in the recent past? Certainly, there's at least an uptick in our perception of political violence now. Is that backed up by data? And again, if so, what do you think the causes are?
I think part of it is like whatever you want to see in the news is kind of what you're going to take away from it at the end. So if you're coming into it with the outlook, and it's hard not to when all the news is talking about is negative after negative after negative, but if you come into it thinking like, oh great, let's look at the next 5 horrible things that happened today, then that's all you're going to see. And I feel like the news has started to focus less on like proposing solutions and more on like only telling the story. And I guess it leaves it up to the people to create solutions, but I don't think we're doing a great job at the moment.
So is it our failure to sort of tamp down on political violence, or is it that there's greater cause for it, do you think?
I don't know.
Don't know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough question to deal with. Yeah, go ahead quickly and then we'll go.
We hear you.
Okay.
I think when people have strong opinions about something, they have like strong beliefs or something, and when especially like to the other side, it's like I'm like you want. I think people try to take offense to that. I feel like they kind of like quote unquote they lose the debate. So I think they use violence as a last resort to as revenge for the other side, maybe.
Okay, did you wanna?
I was going to go on your point about like hopelessness. You know, there's a lot more mental health issues currently in the country, and I do think, you know, people go out and do political violence and they know they're going to die, but because they're so hopeless about the situation, they're okay with that. And so I do think I do think that, like you said, there is more to it, that people are very hopeless, and they feel that maybe they can do something, and even if they do die, that's okay, because they push the ball to a better place in their opinion. But I think it also just then feeds into each other, because one person does it, then someone does it again.
Okay, the rest of you agree with that? Aren't there more, don't we have more resources and facilities to treat people who feel this way than ever before? So why is it increasing? I mean, do you want to...
We've seen so much. We've seen an increase in all these resources, but we've also seen an increase in vehicles for radicalization. I mean, look at Twitter, now known as X. I mean, you've got. There's been a lot of opportunities for free speech now. There isn't as much regulation, but with that, you've seen increased encouragement for political violence. There's a lot of people who feel emboldened to say whatever they think and feel on the internet, and there's a lot of people who aren't mentally stable enough to discern that, hey, this is just something that crazy people are saying on the internet, I shouldn't go actually do this. That people feel emboldened to do different things and act upon horrible thoughts because they feel like this is something that everybody's thinking. They get in these echo chambers, they think this is dire, this is something that must happen, when in reality it's not. They're just so out of touch.
Any others? Yeah.
Yeah, just to go off of what he said, I think a big problem has been the decentralization of news and media itself. Because back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, there were only 3 channels on the TV and you could get your news from. But today, you can get your news from any source that you would like with their own biases, and they can go into echo chambers. So that can increase radicalization, I think, within people.
I think another part that could potentially feed into it is desensitization, which social media can also play into. Because with violence, and especially gun violence, I assume the people here seem relatively young. We did the school shooting drills every year, multiple times a year, and that kind of does. And hearing about it in the news a lot kind of does desensitize you to it. And with social media, it's really easy to just make bold sweeping statements and have it reach a public platform. And sort of related to that, there was a sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, there was a Republican, I think, speaker from Colorado. I think his name is Matt Silver, who made 2 tweets that people didn't like. One of them was celebrating the death of Jimmy Carter, and the other one was Colorado Democrats were trying to pass a stricter gun bill, and he basically made a call for civil war, which is a call for violence, and social media allows you to just make that statement without really thinking, but also the fact that it's a representative. I feel it's kind of more dangerous than no one should say it, but yeah, sorry.
So it's the very proliferation of media that you were talking about that allows people to sort of surround themselves with nothing but these kinds of images. And again, correct me if I don't want to put words in your mouth. so correct me if I misunderstand you, but it's that very proliferation of media that allows you to surround yourself with whatever that leads to the sort of desensitization that you're talking about. There are people who are just surrounded with nothing but this sort of constant feedback of, in this case, violent material. Is that sort of what you're...
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over here.
I'm going to disagree. Before we had television, we had newspaper. The only place you could get your news from was from these local city newspapers. And the language that they employed was almost worse than what we had today. And there's a joke that history majors make to themselves is, if there's ever a problem in the United States, blame the press, and you're probably right. So, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a history major and I see a lot of people talk about political violence becoming more of a problem, but I kind of look at it and say it's been like this forever. I mean, and it's not really kind of a minority thing. Like, it's not the minority group that's doing violence. It's across the spectrum. Like, example, the Birmingham church bombings. That wasn't like... 1963,
what you're talking about? Yeah, the
that
young
wasn't,
children.
Yeah, that wasn't like... that wasn't groups fighting for civil rights doing the bombing. It was the majority party doing the bombing itself to reinforce their political ideology. So, again, I just don't see much of a political violence problem. It's probably gotten better, to be honest.
So you're sort of agreeing that with what we said before, that it's always been there. So is it maybe just a greater awareness now?
Probably.
Okay. Yeah, in the back. Speak up.
I would like to say that it's probably a more increased value, and maybe also a little bit of how modern day news is kind of put out there, because news sites nowadays rely on, especially in the age of the internet, rely on clicks and views to make money, and the best way to get their attention, to get views, is with shock value. That kind of turned them to go more radical to get people's shock value so that they will click. So I think it's also part of the business model of modern day news, I guess, that could seem to be either bringing more awareness to political violence or driving political violence through shock value and, I guess, by proxy, more radicalization.
I think it was in, I don't know if any of you were in my American government class, but I think it was in that class that we saw a video about modern social media algorithms that automatically feed you more of what they think you want. And so it's kind of like a snowball effect. Is that, okay, over here, and then I think we'll go over there.
Yeah, as for the trends of political violence, I would argue that it comes in waves more so, because you look at really the 90s and the 2000s, there wasn't really a ton of political violence. Of course, Reagan got shot in 1980 and Harvey Milk was assassinated, I think, in 79. But then if you look before that, the last, like the 60s obviously had a lot of political violence, but then it almost went away for a while, and now it seems like it's coming back. And I guess, I don't know why that's happening. You could discuss some theories like people are more divided now, similarly how they were in the 60s. So I don't know, I think my point is I think it comes in waves. It's not necessarily always there, but it's always lying beneath the surface.
So maybe something has always been there, but it's kind of peaks and valleys?
Yes.
Okay. Since we're over here, we're going to stay over here for just a bit, and I'm going to go to you for the first time, and then we'll get back to you.
So I think a lot of it has to do with, you talking about the algorithms earlier. A lot of people feel like things that they've worked for so long, like changes that they worked for so long, when they get videos recommended to them of people saying things that are very contrary to something that they've worked for a very long time, I think it makes them feel more hopeless, as if all the work that they've done or the people before them have done, it means nothing because they're just so used to seeing all these horrible things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't made progress, but I can understand why they would feel that way. And I think that adds to the hopelessness, which can increase political violence because people think that the only way people will listen to them is if they do something drastic.
Okay.
I do want to agree with your point there. That I think we've had a lot of political violence in our history, except a lot of it's been traumatic, and we've wanted to forget it. Like Oakland City bombing, you talk about the church bombings, like we've had a lot of those violence, and it dates back even sometimes over 100 years. But we want to forget it, so we forget it. And so when we have these waves of a bit more, we like don't know where it came from, but we've always had this violence, and it's always been here. Except after a couple decades, we cover it up and try not to remember.
So it's so maybe it seems to go in waves because we don't want to remember
We don't
these
want to
things that
remember that
happened.
happened.
Okay. Did you want to?
You brought up an aspect about how social media can feed you the type of stuff that you want to see, and it can lead you down pipelines.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just saw a video just yesterday on YouTube. It was this guy who did a test to see how fast does it take on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube on the Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts to get into these type of pipelines. He made brand new accounts on all three of the platforms. He's a VPN, so it doesn't have any bias of which location he's in. And it took on average maybe 70 to 100 swipes per social media site to start getting into these pipelines of how easy it is to fall into it. So for a lot of young people, because again, I think a lot of us here were using YouTube as kids, and it's really easy to get into that pipeline of finding videos and getting sucked into it because it's such a prevalent issue and kids aren't really aware of it, and it can manipulate their politics and their point of view, and it can radicalize them. And you can see that what's happening now is that if you see a lot of the younger generation, like Gen Alpha coming up and younger Gen Zers, a large amount of political beliefs came from YouTube and stuff like that. So a lot of the times the radicalization comes from online sources like YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok.
That's exactly what I've shown in my classes, in my American government classes. And again, I don't know if anybody here is in my American government class now, but one of the videos shows that there were researchers who created an online profile, a fake online profile, and had that profile like a certain set of politicians and join a certain set of groups. And within just a few days, those social media sites began to feed them all sorts of things going into extremes. And the social media that you guys see today is very different from the way it was even 10 or 15 years ago when these things first came out. I mean, if you look at your Instagram or TikTok accounts, or if anybody still uses Facebook, look at Facebook, you'll see all sorts of, and YouTube also, recommended, right? Recommended pages, recommended sites, recommended people to follow, right? You get that all the time, and that's the algorithms trying to draw you in. And they know what you want because you've told them. By the way, that's another video that I show to a number of my classes, and that is that prior to the age of social media, marketers would have to go out and actually talk to people. But nowadays, you and I, we all give them all the information we want. They just get it from those social media sites because they know what things you click on. They know what people you follow. All of that data is available from TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and any other and YouTube and any other social media sites. And so that stuff is all readily available, and we give it to them. We don't even think about it, but we give it to them. Yeah.
I know that social media has affected a lot of our views and how we go about things, but I think that also a lot of political violence, a lot of harsh feelings come from something that's like installed in us as Americans for a long time. Like the idea of a revolution is something that we are incredibly passionate about. And revolutions are unfortunately violent in nature. And that's like, even like growing up, you have like the idea of like F around and find out. If someone messes with you, you're supposed to protect your home, you're supposed to protect yourself, which I believe is all good things and part of American values, but also it can go to an extreme, and I think that's what we're seeing is like this installed belief if someone is messing with you or someone's messing with your idea. Now we're trying to protect ourselves, now we're trying to do this, and then it just escalates and escalates. When passion gets involved, unfortunately violence also sometimes follows. And I think that's what we're kind of getting the idea of.
Okay, Sedona, and then we actually have an online post on here, and I'm going to read that after you give your comment.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like we all sat in history class, and like low-key the most interesting part was like the proposal of like a revolution. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, we can do that, like if we're mad enough. So I think it is kind of ingrained in us. But I also think social media definitely plays into it. But as the younger generation, the generation that's always a little bit more active politically in protest involved, I think it hits like a lot closer to home than just social media. Like even just on our campus, it's been a month now since Charlie Kirk was shot. He would have turned 32 in a week. And the day before he was shot, there were posters even around our campus, not ones that were properly installed or that went through like the rules of UNG or anything, but that were calling him openly a fascist and telling people to come to a meeting with like white robes. So I think it really is up to us to some degree as individuals. We would love to blame social media and the news and everything, but like that type of narrative, the narrative that leads to political violence, is present closer than we think. It's not just the news, it's not what you're seeing later on when you get home from class. It's a little closer than that.
Okay, we had a potential shooting incident just last year on campus at the library, am I correct? Let me read this and then see how you all react to it. I've only skimmed it myself, but we have a poster saying, "Is there anything to say about the fact that politically motivated shootings and violence are committed by the right at much higher rates, and the current administration's rhetoric further fuels this? While social media contributes, the powers that be do nothing to help this." What do you all think? Do you want to address that? Okay.
Yes, I think is the main.
Okay.
I mean, it's been studied. It's been a fact that, I mean, I have it pulled up here from PBS that I'll just give the straight quote. Based on government and independent analyses, right-wing extremist violence has been responsible for the overwhelming majority of fatalities, accounting to approximately 75% to 80% of U.S. domestic terrorism deaths since 2001. Now, that shouldn't negate the fact that there is left-wing violence, and, you know, in speaking on the Charlie Kirk assassination, it's not necessarily clear yet what his views were, but it obviously was attacking a right-wing figure. So it is important to understand that there is left-wing violence, but there isn't enough accountability held to a lot of the right-wing violence, as it is the overwhelming majority in our nation, as the left is attacked more. You know, we have the Red Scare, we have anti-communism, a lot of these measures that has kind of left the far right and fascism to kind of boil up and sit under a rock, and now we're seeing it come out from under the rock.
Okay, you want to address that?
Yeah, so I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, a third-party voter. So I kind of come to it from like a non-partisan perspective of why does it matter what views someone who's clearly unwell has. I never have liked the constant of something bad happens and the immediate response is to immediately dissect the political views of the person who committed violence. They're unwell. It doesn't matter what their views are. It doesn't matter where they originated from. They were unwell. Like, they could have been a socialist. It doesn't matter. That's not an indictment of socialism itself. They could have been a fascist. That's not an indictment of fascism itself. You indict the ideology itself, not the people. You know, people are crazy. It exists everywhere. So, like, diagnosing their political ideology is just odd to me.
So you think there's too much of a focus on that, and that's not really addressing the problem?
I do.
Is that sort of, okay. Yeah, we'll go back there, and then you guys had your hands up before.
I think what you said about like right-wing violence, I think what you said about the Red Scare is very interesting. Because I think the far left is very much a lesser force compared to the far right in America, I would say. And part of that is like Red Scare and anti-communism, all these other movements. And you look at a more global scale, I would say, left-wing versus right-wing political violence evens out. I think specific countries deal with more than one or the other because it's which one is more accepted on their kind of side.
Okay, just to be clear, you're talking about internationally, basically.
Internationally, like, it evens out. But I think in America specifically, we just have more right-wing political violence. And I think that's just, like, because of the Red Scare and all the anti-communist stuff.
Okay, and I should say that I think there's probably evidence that it goes in waves here too, because if you look at the 1960s and 70s, probably at least the most well-known is not necessarily the best way to put it, but the most well-known political violence at that time was left-wing political violence. Look up Weather Underground.
Yeah.
Okay. Look up SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. These were violent groups that bombed places. They created bombs and set them off and blew up places in college campuses and around the country. So maybe it goes even there in ways. But even at that point, just to get back to what you were saying, you're suggesting that none of that really matters. Is that right? Okay. Yeah.
Unfortunate how people bring up descriptions when it comes to for lack of a better word, crazy people. I don't think necessarily what party they align to, their race or gender, necessarily has to do with the fact that they are a crazy person who did something absolutely horrible. I think media really installs the belief that, like, separation, like a shock value, and they'll focus on things like that separate us, when it should be just that someone's crazy and they did something awful. I really agreed with him on how he handled or how he spoke about that. I think it's just really awful how we approach things, because I think it just, instead of in a moment of crisis and mourning, instead of coming together, it separates us further.
Okay, Sedona, you've been waiting for a while. So.
Yeah, I also really agree with the both of you, and you said that really well. I feel like there was also vandalism on this campus related to that exact notion of, like, immediately blaming somebody for their party and not for their actual actions as an individual. Some posters that had pictures of Charlie on them were, somebody wrote, like, haha, the shooter was one of your own, or something like that on one of them. That's great, that doesn't solve anything. And then people were also using, like, sharp objects to pierce holes through the posters in a very specific place. So I feel like it's, of course, important to consider, like, it's a political issue, so we have to consider perhaps somebody's motive. That's why we have to look at statistically who has committed more. But just looking at somebody's motive does not necessarily justify it at all. Their motive doesn't have to be rational. There can be a motive, but nobody said, like, oh, the motive totally justifies murder in a public space in front of thousands of people.
Okay, our online poster has another post, so let's see what they have to say. And it says, could it not be the case, let's see if I can read this, could it not be the case that devotion to ideology drove them to madness? To be unwell enough to believe in fascism wholeheartedly, would they not be more prone to acts of violence? You guys.
I think it is important to highlight that there are certain ideologies that encourage violence. I mean, let's just get into fascism. I mean, Adolf Hitler. I mean, we look at even far left ideologies. We're thinking about communism, not like democratic socialism. We're far stuff. Marxism encourages a revolution from the lower classes to seize the means of production. These far right, far left ideologies do encourage violence, and I think it is important to highlight that and understand that there are ideologies that do encourage political violence, and that people who are unwell may be encouraged to join these more radical forces. And but it isn't just strictly mentally well or mentally unwell people. People will believe what they want to believe, and sometimes their beliefs are a little radical. And it's important to understand whose beliefs are radical or dangerous to us.
Okay, do you want to say something?
I think it also could be like again, an echo chamber, but not only on social media, but also like a physical echo chamber where you just don't know a lot of people from the other side. Because I grew up in a small town, and I can firmly say that everyone that I knew leaned more to the right. So I think it could also be a position of isolation, and you only hear one side of the one political side. So it would not be easy if you stayed in that isolated environment.
Okay.
At least when it comes to something that's so extreme as political violence, and whether it comes from being in an incredibly extremist sector of either party, I think it's like a chicken before the egg type situation. Does the crazy person make a party area before they do like something crazy, or is it that the crazy person comes after they join? Like, I think it's hard to describe for something like that because it's someone doing something absolutely atrociously violent, and whether or not they were going to be a part of more people that apparently enjoy violence doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't have done something in the first place. I think maybe it could escalate it, having more people in a consolidated area that all have the same belief in being and doing something violent. But whether or not that was the cause for it is, I don't know if you could actually like test for that or be able to know that that's like what happened there. I think it has to do with like someone being incredibly unstable. I mean, not to like, there's unfortunately a lot of people in general that aren't incredibly stable. I don't know if many of you have been to Waffle House at 3 a.m. You see people. There's interesting demographics that exist, and sometimes it can be a good thing to have incredible diversity of thought, and then other times, unfortunately, extreme people with, I assume, bad mental health and a lot of other things make an incredibly unfortunate circumstance.
Be prepared to hear from Waffle House's lawyers.
On the chicken before the egg, like you said, I think I know where this person got this from exactly, but when people go down these far extremist opinions, or really any devotion, it can make it a struggle to interact with anyone who doesn't also share those opinions. And so they slowly, as they isolate themselves slowly as they get deeper and deeper and deeper into these like ideologies or beliefs. And because of that, lose people. And at some point, they do become legitimately mentally ill because of what they believe in. And this isn't just like far left, far right. It's just really a lot of different things that cover this. And so I do think that's where you get people who do look normal, who do have a pretty normal personality, but they end up doing political violence because they get dragged down and they lose everyone around them and become generally mentally ill.
And it seems to be that a lot of that is the development of social media, which has taken over our lives. I was just about to say that a whole bunch of us have our cell phones out and are looking at them either right now or most of the time. And there are some people who just get enveloped by that. That kind of isolation is fostered by social media, which kind of feeds you everything you want. So you don't seek anything outside? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think a part of that too was because when pandemic hit and train training, a lot of us were starting to have homes. Like we have computer about a lot of things. I think people sitting on in a computer to hear a lot of these conspiracy theories were starting to boil up. Or like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to know lockdowns. I think that really became the turning point for political violence because I just want to go back to my normal life without the government telling me what to do.
Okay. Actually, it would be interesting now that you mentioned that. Unfortunately, Facebook has taken down all our old Crossroads videos from prior years. Apparently they're doing that, not just us, they're not focused on us, they're doing that with a lot of places that generated a lot. But I did manage to save them all. Hopefully we can put them back up somewhere, maybe on YouTube. But my point is that maybe we can go back to pre-pandemic days and look at some of the discussions we had and see if what you're suggesting was manifested back then, that prior to the pandemic, people were not necessarily as tied down to their own social media, or I think there was still a lot of that even in 2018, 2019, but maybe not as much. Who's next? Oh, yeah, let's go back over here.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but political violence doesn't always have to be someone getting killed. I think that a lot of times we focus so much on like people getting killed. We don't think about the fact that nowadays it's so common to hear people say things and treat people in terrible ways just because they surround themselves with people and ideologies that make them feel comfortable saying these things. And I don't think it's ridiculous to say that like political violence is on the upturn right now because people are just so incredibly comfortable saying whatever they want. It can actually make people feel like they're in danger.
Okay, Ainsley?
Building off what you said, I just wanted to point out to what you mentioned earlier, the Charlie Kirk thing. I remember when it first happened, a lot of people were making videos of that on like TikTok and Instagram. And like you said, there were so many people being so nasty, not even about Charlie Kirk, but about the people making the videos, even going so far as to say things like, I hope they kill you next. And so I think you're right. You don't even actually have to like go out and shoot someone. Like, it's as simple as like threatening them, and I think social media has given us a platform to do this with relative ease due to the functional anonymity. That's just my thoughts.
So there's a whole sliding scale of what we're talking about here. It's not just violence itself, but there's snarky comments leading, and then things that are escalating all the way up to actual violence. From the comments to the threats to the actual violence, you're suggesting that there's a whole range of things that are going on. Okay. Let's go back here and then we'll go back there.
To kind of add to like the issue of social media is that people are so bold nowadays. It used to be that free speech was kind of like you could, your voice was heard as much as your voice could be heard, as the people in this room are hearing my voice. But that's being recorded, and now it's going to be online. And that's kind of the issue we're dealing with, is that our voices can be heard so much, and that anybody's voice can be heard, which free speech is a foundational part of our democracy. But people use it maliciously, and there's no way around that. And people are emboldened by reactions and clicks, and that it's almost a game. And they're playing this game a little too dangerously, is generally my opinion.
Okay, we're going to go to Tyler because he's been waiting for a while, then we'll go back over.
So, I mean, political violence is not just like something that happens in these big environments of like national politics. Stuff like this happens in Dahlonega, in small towns. And the best example I can give for that is probably about a year ago at last year's Gold Rush Festival. I tabled with the Lumpkin County Democrats because I'm involved with them, and throughout the 2 days of the Gold Rush Festival, I was yelled at, spit at, I was cussed at. This guy with his 2 kids and his 2 little frou-frou white dogs told me that he was going to beat my ass. I was confident, but somebody drove him away, I don't know. But it happens, and it's because in recent politics, people feel emboldened to say those things. They feel like they can say it, and more people will agree with them rather than tell them that they're acting like idiots. And it's just kind of something that comes along with how polarized our political landscape is now.
I guess I'm also kind of piggybacking off his point that physical violence is not the only form of violence. Like he gave real life examples, but there's also examples on social media like doxing, stalking, stuff of that nature. And also there's the incitement of violence that can also kind of fall into the political violence category that we need to be careful of. And
Yeah.
doxing can happen for some of that stuff happens for the smallest of reasons a lot of the time.
Yes, that's sort of that sliding scale that I was talking about before that you were kind of leaning. Yeah, let's go here.
Just because I had something to say kind of like with Tyler, I think people don't quite understand some of the hate that unfortunately is a scourge in even smaller communities, whether it has to do with politics or anything else. Hate is unfortunately easy for people to do. It affects us all, and it's so unfortunate when it is in any community, whether small or large. But like even like sometimes things can get localized too. Like I love this community. I love Dahlonega. I grew up here, but my family faced racial violence and threats because when they moved here about 20 years ago, they were a mixed-race couple. My family got spat at, yelled at. Our house had paint thrown at it, egged. We got threatening mail from like KKK members and stuff. It was very scary for my family. My mom's still very nervous about things because of that. And so it's not just always a political thing. It's not always a race thing. It's not always anything that someone finds easy to hate. They will do it just because it's something easy. It brings whatever awful sense of like I'm a religious person, so like whatever like that sinful nature or just harshness that is in people, it's easy to let out, and it's something that affects everyone. And it's unfortunate how much it is in our society.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll let you go in a second, but in the last few minutes, let's start thinking about what's going to happen in the future. Is it going to be more of the same? Is it going to change? Whatever. Go
I
ahead.
think with AI slowly becoming into everything nowadays, it's easy to make a fake video of somebody saying, "Oh, I'm gonna kill XYZ," for example, and reality like, "No, I didn't do that. It's AI." I think it's easy too hard to tell because technology is moving way fast.
Mm-hmm. Moving faster than we can adjust to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, the killing of Charlie Kirk was not the only political violence that happened recently. There was the Minnesota politician, Melissa Hortman, I believe is her name, her husband, and their dog Gilbert. And that hurts because he was really cute. Just, who kills a dog? That's ridiculous. But, yeah, right. Unfortunately, both Charlie Kirk and Melissa's deaths are being used as political tools to get brownie points with their followers, with their voters. Charlie Kirk is being turned into a martyr, and whether you agree with that or not, he was, a human. We shouldn't be using him for political engagement, political tool. Same with Melissa's death. People are using her death to argue about Charlie Kirk's death. Tragedies used to unite us. Tragedies used to get Americans to rally behind one another. But now, every single time something happens, we have to find out what that political ideology was. Why did they do it? Who do they agree with? Who did they vote for? Why do we have to do that? These are just crazy people. They don't speak for any political party. They don't speak for any political politician. They don't speak for anybody. They're insane. They're killing people because of politics. That's insane. And if we keep allowing ourselves to get angry because, oh, this guy voted for Trump and he killed these politicians, or this guy hates Trump so he killed Charlie Kirk, that's going to keep dividing us. That's going to keep allowing political violence to happen. And we are not ever going to be able to unite behind one another like we used to do.
Okay, let's go over here.
So back to the main idea of political violence, I do think, contrary to what he was saying, that political violence is most certainly on the upturn. I believe that it is going to become far worse than it ever has been. Maybe not ever has been, but at least for the past 30 or 40 years. And I'm saying this because I think that people, like I was saying earlier, are so emboldened by what they're saying, but also from I didn't really go into detail earlier, but I mean, people have told me that my family from Palestine should die just because they believe that someone on the internet, they can say whatever they want on the internet, so why can't they say anything they want to me now? And I don't like, obviously, I'm not trying to make this about me, but like, I feel like these kind of situations tend to happen like a lot more than they used to because people are just so emboldened by this. And I do agree that like pushing it on people's political agendas is a problem, but I'm not surprised because people are like almost upheld by their political beliefs to say these things. Like they feel supported to say these things.
Okay.
I think, kind of what everyone above here is saying, more political violence breeds more violence. The more there is political violence, the more they will retaliate. To go on an example outside the US, like the Troubles in Ireland, they would bomb each other relentlessly because of it. And the only way it ended is when they sat down and negotiated. And then I think Charlie Kirk's wife coming out and saying she forgave the shooter, I think was a very powerful moment. And we need more of that. More of saying, I will not bring hate because you brought hate to me. And I think that is what will cool down the political violence. If we cannot do that, it will spiral, like you said. But if we can step back and realize that we're all human and we all deserve to be treated as equals, I think that is when we can start to turn down.
Fingers crossed, right?
People made good choices so far. So.
Yeah, so I think that AI going along with political discussions and people using AI to make politicians say things is an extreme problem that we're going to have in the future and we're having right now. So I think eventually the government will have to step in and actually regulate AI in some way. Because I don't think they're doing that at all right now.
Okay, last word, and then we'll have a new question.
I think it goes back to the fact that we're kind of soft in America, in a sense. We have had the luxury of being a prosperous nation. We haven't had war on our soil since, what, the War of 1812 or the Mexican-American War?
Except for Pearl Harbor.
Except for Pearl Harbor. But in 9/11, you know.
And 9/11, true.
But we don't know how shitty violence is. We haven't been in a war on our soil like the Civil War. Or we haven't had these sort of instances. You know, it's the hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And right now we're going to experience a lot of violence and shit until we realize, oh, this is not the path that we want to go down, and we're gonna have to reverse.
Okay, you want to close this out? Maybe you have an apology to Waffle House?
So, kind of final words. Thank y'all for all coming here today, having this discussion. I think my big takeaways are just like, we need to be able to install peace. We need to be able to come together, and before anything, we are people, we are humans. And I would like to think that hopefully all of us will install a bit of kindness and more peace with everybody. Also, in case anybody wasn't here when I said the announcements earlier, on the 22nd, we're having Professor Miner come talk about foreign policy. He's really awesome if you've never taken one of his classes. Incredibly interesting person. Very fun. Please come to that. And also, we're going to be doing a Halloween party on the 28th, the Tuesday before Halloween. It should be a lot of fun. It's just supposed to be like a chill, like, I mean, I guess you guys can talk about politics if you want to, but like, it's just a Halloween party, really. I wanted an excuse to have a potluck too, so there's also going to be food. So it should be a lot of fun, so you guys should come.
Okay, see you all right here next week.
Very good.